Life is rough, so why not spice it up with a duster hit, the adrenaline fix for teens who laugh at life insurance? Or how about a dose of Foxy-Methoxy? Because who doesn't love a classy-sounding chemical thrill? Better yet, have a game of psychosis tennis after a hit of the craziest drug ever invented, EA 3167. We have the CIA to thank for that one. Today on the Infographics Show, we're looking at the most insane drugs you didn't know existed. Prepare to have your mind melted on this wild trip. Number 11. Air Duster. Imagine this. A young man is at home, bored out of his mind. Like 98% of humanity, he can't afford Apple's $3,500 Vision Pro headset. So he goes for the next best thing. And no, it's not Netflix. He huffs a can of $4.99 compressed air, aka Air Duster. What a sweet deal. It's canned VR for the broke and brave. According to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration in 2017, this was the natural choice for around 1% of 12 to 17-year-old Americans. Okay, that doesn't seem like a big number, but it is still about 210,000 kids huffing keyboard cleaners. It's enough. Let's be honest, huffing dust remover is not the most prudent way to get your kicks. You can end up like the 35-year-old American guy who huffed dust off every day for a month. He came down with a non-ST elevation myocardial infarction, a type of heart attack with a name longer than his sobriety. Huffing these so-called cans of sunshine is sometimes referred to as dusting. Spray it in a bag or go straight up the nose and spray, and boom, you're on cloud 9. Euphoria kicks in, you're relaxed, the room is spinning, and suddenly you're talking like Lurch from the Addams Family. Another user on the drug website Arrowhead said that he dusted for a full night, and it started off fine, but he ended up with a massive headache, nausea, shivering, cold tongue, and chest pains. He was lucky not to wake up in a pool of his own vomit. You definitely don't want this to happen in the bathtub, like the pop rapper Aaron Carter, who dusted himself to death in 2022. Don't be like him. Save up for a Vision Pro, it is much safer. Let's look at a drug that's a little more sophisticated. Number 10. Dragonfly. When you end up losing your feet and fingers from taking a drug, maybe it's time to just say no. That's exactly what happened to a 35-year-old guy in Sweden after he took a hit of Dragonfly. It's a hallucinogen with a twist, like LSD on nightmare mode. You trip major balls. It might take you as long as 6 hours to come up, but buckle in, it might last as long as 12 hours to 3 days. That is 3 intense days of frenzied hallucinations, possible seizures, and if you're really unlucky, amputations. Dragonfly is a vasoconstrictor, meaning it constricts veins and blood vessels. In worst cases, the lack of blood getting to your organs precipitates necrosis, aka dead tissue, and gangrene ensues. Next thing you know, you're waking up in the ER wondering why you can't feel your toes. Oh right, they're gone. An 18-year-old in England said he paid £5, $6.50, for a hit and was assured he'd only get a mellowish high similar to LSD. A few hours later, his heart had stopped twice and his lungs called it quits. His mother was told if her son came out of this, he had a permanently damaged brain and a lifetime of listening to Taylor Swift on repeat. We're kidding, we're all Swifties here at the Infographics Show. The doctor said it would just last a month or two. He actually survived his ordeal. He later told the BBC he got a small hit of liquid Dragonfly, which he took from a dropper in a vial. He and his friends each squeezed a drop onto their hands and licked it off. I started getting really hot and slightly panicky. I couldn't concentrate on anything, he said. He couldn't shake it off. Soon he was hallucinating, being attacked by a swarm of angry bees, and being cut up by thorn bushes. He was quickly restrained by his friends, he vomited, he convulsed, and he was on his deathbed before you could say, "Is this a bad idea?" Somehow he pulled off a miracle recovery, though haunted by intense flashbacks. Still, it is better than Oklahoma in 2012, where 6 college kids took a hit of Dragonfly, cue vomiting, seizures, and 2 who tripped straight into an early grave. Dragonfly is described as a potent hallucinogen, but as you'll see later in this video, there are levels to tripping, and some reach depths of insanity you wouldn't think were even possible. Number 9. Nitazines. In the world of synthetic opioids, would you believe there's actually something worse than fentanyl? Fentanyl spread has been devastating, claiming thousands of lives across the US. But now there's a new drug on the streets that's so potent it dwarfs even fentanyl's deadly potential. They're called nitazines, a group of synthetic opioids so powerful they make fentanyl look mild. Nitazines were developed in the 1950s as a substitute for morphine. but were never approved for medical use since they were actually too powerful. And not just a little. Recent reports indicate that certain nitazines can be up to 20 times more potent than fentanyl, which is already 50 times more potent than heroin and 80 to 100 times more potent than morphine. And unfortunately, it looks like they are here to stay. Nitazines have been popping up around the world as a cheap way to cut street drugs like cocaine, oxycodone, and counterfeit pharmaceuticals like Valium. This has led to people overdosing since they're often unaware of the presence of the deadly drug. Nitazines have even been found in synthetic cannabis and ketamine coming from the dark web. Basically, it's cheap and it gets you messed up, so the traffickers can put in minuscule amounts in any drug they choose. You do a rail of coke and instead of talking about how great you are for 4 hours straight, you end up in a brain-killing coma. Nitazines is plural because it's technically a group of drugs: isotonitazine, metonitazine, etonitazine, and protonitazine. But no matter the name, our advice is the same: stay away. Next up is an incredibly strong hallucinogen, but if you can believe it, there's an even more powerful one coming up later. Number 8. Salvia. Some of you might have heard of salvia, a super potent hallucinogen derived from the plant Salvia divinorum that can be smoked, drunk, or chewed. This isn't the giggly arm-waving kind of high. One hit, and as a first-time user said online, you're on a level 5 trip into another bleeping dimension. You might meet some aliens on your interdimensional trip. Maybe you'll bump into a monster or two, just like a guy who said, "I tried screaming, but the monster moved closer. My body seemed to crumble into multiple interlocking puzzle pieces." So yeah, we're talking serious tripping territory. Now imagine that same drug but 6 or 7 times stronger. Welcome to Salvia Mark II, Salvia on steroids, where your alien encounters don't just last 30 minutes, but 2 to 3 hours. We're talking about salvinorin B methoxyl methyl ether. Our favorite review of this drug is very to the point, stronger than anything you can imagine. It's also legal and popular in the US and Europe. For a few bucks, you can become a giant standing high above your city. You could become a species of sausage in a galactic federation. Or if you're feeling really delusional, life coach at age 22. Human sausage is more plausible. But why not go all in and grab a hit of PMMA? Number 7. PMMA. Would you buy a drug that was advertised with the words "dance until you die" or "rave to the grave"? No, we thought not. Introducing Dr. Death. Its full name is para-methoxy N-methylamphetamine, which is shortened to PMMA. It acts like an amphetamine. It gives you a lot of energy, and in the right, some might say wrong environment, it makes you talk incessantly. It is deadly too. Between July 2010 and January 2011, 12 people in Norway died after blasting off with PMMA, thinking that they were taking ecstasy. It's claimed people all over the world, including 21 in Calgary, Canada in the space of a year, and another 5 people at the Time Warp Rave in Buenos Aires in 2016. It's banned now, but the thing with designer drugs is as soon as it's outlawed, a newer, often deadlier version pops up. Here's a pro tip: try not to put anything in your mouth if you don't know what it is. Trust us, you'll be grateful by the end of this episode. Number 6. Pyro. Mention pyro, and the classicists among you might picture an ancient Greek hero, while the soccer fans imagine smoky chaos on the pitch. You'd be wrong. Pyro is one of the many new synthetic opioids now on the streets of the drug-addled developed world. It's another designer drug currently making a splash in the USA, which is dealing with the 4th wave of the opioid crisis. Pyro, its full name N-pyrrolidinoatonitazine, is exactly what the 4th wave is all about. Synthetic drugs that are killing people in great numbers, often hidden in fake pills or cocaine. And because fentanyl wasn't already bad enough, this stuff is 10 times stronger. That makes it 1,000 times to 1,500 times stronger than morphine. Taking it is often compared to playing Russian roulette. Over the last few years, pyro has shown up in drug samples in Indiana, New York, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Florida, and Colorado, and was recently found in fake opioid pills in Ottawa, Canada. It's part of a sketchy class of nitazines, cooked up by chemists who find heroin too high maintenance and opium a hassle to grow. Recently, nitazines have caused a spike in UK fatalities. But of course, the UK is still lagging behind. It's only on its 2nd opioid crisis wave. Total loser move according to their own press. Still, it's trying its best to catch up. Canada and the Scandinavian countries are also digging in deep to get their opioid death numbers up to a respectable level. We hope you know we're being ironic. This is terrible. And if you're as hooked as we are, drop a comment. Now back to some more drug weirdness. Number 5. Galantamine. You're sitting in a crowded classroom sweating bullets. The teacher slams a thick stack of test papers on your desk and says, "You have exactly 5 minutes to finish this or you'll fail life forever." You glance down and you realize you're naked. The class starts laughing and someone throws a paper airplane that turns into a bird mid-flight. Wait a second, you think, glancing at the wall where the week's lunches have been posted. My school didn't have a Taco Tuesday? This must be a dream. Suddenly, you're in control and making all your dreams come true, like making every day a Taco Tuesday. And it's all thanks to lucid dreaming, where you realize you're dreaming and you can take control of the chaos. With the help of galantamine, a supplement originally developed for mild to moderate Alzheimer's patients, this kind of wild, self-aware adventure can become much easier to experience. Taken about 2/3 into your sleep cycle, galantamine can enhance your ability to recognize and control your dreams. Studies show that around 57% of participants who tried it over 2 nights reported improved lucid dreaming. It's not particularly dangerous, but like any supplement, it is not without risks. So if you're ready to ace your dreams, naked tests, tacos, and all, galantamine might be your key. Just be prepared, because the next drug on this list is less dreamlike and more of a full-blown nightmare. Number 4. MPTP. If anyone ever offers you some 1-methyl-4-phenyl 1,2,3,6-tetrahydropyridine, after you compliment them on their memory and pronunciation, give it a hard pass. Called MPTP for short, it gets into your brain, and like a well-armed spree killer, it starts shooting up dopaminergic neurons. It gives you instant Parkinson's disease symptoms, definitely not the vibe for a night out. You start shaking, your speech is slurred, your muscles hurt. You can't stand up straight. Why on God's green earth would anyone pay good money for that? The answer is people don't take it on purpose. It doesn't even get you high. It seems it's accidentally produced in the making of another drug, an opioid, dysmethylprotein. In 1976, a 23-year-old chemistry student in the U.S. named Barry Kidston wanted to get high. Knowing a thing or two about mind-altering chemicals, he tried to make his own illicit drug. It was contaminated with MPTP, and he was soon at the hospital confusing the hell out of doctors when he appeared like a 70-year-old Parkinson's sufferer. It seems that Kidston wasn't deterred by his Parkinson's experience. He died about a year and a half later from a cocaine overdose. If he'd stayed alive until 1983, he would have read about a Parkinson's outbreak in California. MPTP was to blame again. 120 people were affected. There have also been cases in Maryland, Vancouver, and British Columbia. Each time, heroin addicts accidentally ingested MPTP. A study on the matter said the neurotoxicity of MPTP produced a severe, permanent Parkinsonian syndrome. Imagine that, getting permanent Parkinson's when all you wanted to do is get stoned. Time for another nugget of infographic show wisdom. Let things kick in before you utter the legendary last words, "It's not working, I want more." Number 3. Foxymethoxy. Anyone watching this with avid drug use listed on their resume under hobbies and interests knows the rule. Never double up before the first dose hits. It is the fine line between feeling good and arguing with your talking fridge, or, death. It's what happened to the many users of the drug 5-MeO-DIPT, aka Foxymethoxy, which is a great name for a Bond girl. It's a psychedelic that users say tastes awful and smells bad. In doses when snorted or smoked, it gradually brings on a pleasant state. There will eventually be oral and visual sensations. It makes a lot of people feel horny. The problem is these feelings might take an hour or two to come on and might not peak until 4 hours after ingestion. Because it takes so long to get going, people often take more. This can quite easily lead you to throwing up your guts. Foxy is hard on the stomach. Light tripping can turn into something more sinister. One user explained, "I began to feel as though I had created my entire life in my head. All the people I met became figments of my imagination. My job became a figment. School was all part of my imagination." That could potentially be the best dog ate my homework excuse ever. "Sorry, teacher, I thought the assignment was a hallucination. And honestly, go away, you don't even exist." Another user summed up his trip as the very depths of internal hell. You might think you're going to die, but it's unlikely you will. Still, a 23-year-old man in the US a few years ago took too much after thinking it wasn't working, and he died of rhabdomyolysis and renal failure 3 hours after he dosed himself up his rectum. A paper on the matter said he experienced very intense agitation and later passed away at the hospital. Like many Bond girls, Foxy Methoxy can become a femme fatale, but it's not in the same league as this next drug. Number 2. Flubromazolam. Before we talk about the heavyweight champ of tripping, let's give a special mention to flubromazolam, a research chemical not approved for humans, but loved by a lot of them. It's 1,4-trizolobenzodiazepine, a drug similar to a well-known benzo, Xanax. The problem is, unlike those drugs, it is not approved for humans. It's made by sketchy chemists for the streets and is incredibly strong and potentially fatal. Legal benzos are rarely fatal, but flubromazolam is no ordinary benzo. One user said online, "I ingested a high dose on Friday, more or less asleep until Sunday. Was still under the influence when waking up. If you managed to stay awake, you might not remember what you did." A user said he came out of a high and was informed during his experience he'd spent 8 hours at the police station. Another said, "Damn, I went and stole a fillet of pork and fried it whole. I never shoplifted before. I actually don't know what the bleep I did." That's why it's the go-to for spiking drinks, knocking people out, and robbing them blind. And if your girlfriend insists on dragging you to a Taylor Swift concert, well, you know what to slip yourself. Seriously, we heart TS. But jokes aside, don't mess with it. Even in very small doses, it's been known to lead to respiratory failure, coma, and death. Okay, now for the maddest drug on this list by far. This is the original Jacob's Ladder drug, a trip to hell and back you better hope never happens to you. Number 1. BZ-EA3167. 3-quinucleodinyl benzylate, also known as BZ, was cooked up back in the days when the US and, to a lesser extent the UK, were busy designing drugs to hijack minds or temporarily wreck sanity. The plan was to use it as a weapon of psychochemical warfare. Drop it from the sky, and you could debilitate a whole battalion or potentially poison an entire town. You could win a battle without bloodshed, but first these drugs needed testing. Researchers working with the CIA used it on US prisoners in the 1950s at the National Institute of Mental Health Addiction Research Center in Kentucky. An article on the matter explained that healthy African American men were given the experimental drug BZ 100 times more powerful than LSD. Just imagine super intense tripping lasting for 72 to 96 hours. But BZ didn't just make people hallucinate, it rendered them totally insane, blinding them from reality. Still, it could get quite comical. When it was tested on unwitting US soldiers, some passed around invisible cigarettes, while a couple of other military test subjects thought that they were playing tennis without rackets or balls or a net. Some just crawled around like mad dogs. All of them were at risk of serious cardiac arrhythmias and deadly electrolyte imbalance. Scientists had created a monster. And then there was Monster Mark II. This was a very similar drug that also caused severe delirium. Its name was EA3167. Unlike BZ, it never got as far as being tested by being dropped in cluster bombs. It was just too extreme. The delirium could last up to 20 days, although usually 5 to 10 days. Imagine being a schizophrenic, psychotic, hysterical tripper for that long. The CIA has always denied dropping drugs like this on people, but some blame the Pont Saint-Esprit mass poisoning in France in 1951 on such an attack. U.S. investigative journalist Hank Albarelli said he found evidence this poisoning was U.S.-led biological warfare. This was when almost an entire town went absolutely dangerously psychotic for 3 days. They saw the dead rise from the grave. They jumped out of buildings thinking they could fly. It just so happened CIA agents and their psychochemical scientists were in France at the same time. Must have been a coincidence. And you can hear more about Pont Saint-Esprit in our terrifying video, CIA Conspiracies That Were True, or have a look at real reason fentanyl is so deadly.